There were a couple of things I brought to Judy's attention about the minutes, just small technical pieces.
Technical edits. So I think that we will move ahead if they were just small technical edits that do not change the content, like commas and stuff like that is what we're referring to. Yeah. Okay. Any further comments on any of the items on the consent agenda? Very well then, would somebody move to accept the consent agenda as in the minutes, as in the agenda? Do I have a second? All in favor? Raise your hand and say aye. I believe it is unanimous. Very good. For the good of the organization, does anybody have a specific item for the good of the organization? I have one for you. This is in honor of your being chair for how many years?
Many.
Many years. Seems like many, right? So a little gift.
Oh, thank you very much.
Picked up by,
It is gorgeous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was truly an honor to, have the opportunity to work with the students. You know, to be part of Minuteman, all the great work that it's doing. So thank you.
And we thank you once again for taking on that responsibility for, I think it was 3 years. It was a long time. Okay. Now I sent you the list. This is why would I do this? I sent you in your packet the list of the previous subcommittee assignments. This is for the year that's ending now. Now, I sent it for a couple reasons. Guess I should turn it off. The first is to let you know the subcommittees, et cetera, that we currently have. And why don't I just go through the list very quickly for those of you who are new. So there's the budget subcommittee, the finance subcommittee, and this is a brief explanation. I'm not going to read it of pretty much what they do. There's the Faculty Association Negotiation Subcommittee. The Policy Subcommittee has completely revised our policy book over the last million years. Superintendent Negotiations and Evaluations Subcommittee. The School Building Subcommittee. Now, most the School Building Committee, that it consists mostly of experts from the community and not primarily school committee members. It is chaired by currently Ford and Alice. The Communications Access and Admissions Subcommittee, whose name we're going to change this year because it's been very confusing for people. That's generally been the communications has been on communicating to people about admissions rather than about the school committee in general. And the purpose of that committee has changed radically over the last year or so. So that really does need a new name. And then we have task forces and liaisons. Now we have a general advisory board, as do all career tech schools. And we need a member of the school committee to be involved with them. So somebody is appointed to do that. The transition task force has been there to assist with the transition of the new superintendent to the school. And then there's a long-term strategic planning task force. So the task forces may not meet as often or be quite as formal as the subcommittee. Now, the reason we have all of these is because a lot of the issues that come forward have a lot of technical aspects to them. And if we were to bring every one of these complex issues directly to the full school committee for debate, we would be here basically forever. So what we've done over the years is we've devised these subcommittees so that they can do the grunt work of working on these issues. And the way that it generally works is that the school committee believes that an issue needs some understanding before we're ready to vote on. The budget, for example. So it is assigned to one of the subcommittees. The subcommittee examines and understands the issue and calls in experts as they need and makes a recommendation. Now, the subcommittees cannot bind the full committee. They don't have the right to do that. What they do is they do the work to understand the issue, look through all the technical aspects, make a recommendation, and bring it back to the full school committee. And in fact, on some issues, they may bring it back to the full school committee multiple times, just to let us know how far they've gotten or what the status is, and to accept comments from the full school committee. And eventually, when they're done with the work, they bring it to the full school committee for a vote. Now, one of the concerns that people have mentioned is that we seem to have a lot of unanimous votes. And one of the reasons is that for many of the complex issues, we don't vote on it right away. We give it to a subcommittee to look on it for a long time, to report back, to bring us up to date. So we see and hear about it multiple times if it's a complicated or important issue before we actually take a vote. So at that point, we pretty much know, because they've gotten feedback over time, where the full school committee stands on the issue. We bring it to a vote, and it's often, not always, but often unanimous for that reason. So the work of the subcommittees is absolutely crucial to the functioning of the school, and we like every member of the school committee to be on at least one of these committees. Now, the procedure for assigning people to it has generally been as follows. The membership can tell us which of the committees they'd like to be on. Or we may say, you happen to know a lot about finance, would you like to be on such and such a committee? So we take all the requests, and generally the officers will propose a slate of committee members. But the full subcommittee has to accept the slate. I mean, we don't impose the slate. We make a recommendation, and then in September, we bring it to the full school committee, and you vote yay or nay on the slate of subcommittee, task force, and liaison members. So that's how the procedure works. Generally, the people who are on the committee, if they like it, then they generally stay, but not always. So the members who are happy with their committees don't have to say anything, but the newer members who aren't on a committee should send an email, probably to Julia, and then she'll send it over to me and the officers over the next week. About, give me, a couple that you wouldn't mind being on, especially one where you know that there's, or that you have a particular skill set that would be useful for it. And then the officers will meet and, write something up, and then in September we'll take a vote, or maybe we'll change some, maybe we won't, whatever. That's generally how it's worked for the last, dozen years or so. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know what the process is, and I gave you the list of these committees and a description of basically what they do and who has been on them this previous year. And the people who are on them are still on them until we vote the new slate and renew the committees, which will probably happen in September. Okay, are there any questions on the subcommittees or what any of them do, or this process? Be happy to take questions, especially from our newer members who have not been through this before. There was a time when we didn't have subcommittees, and the problem was that the superintendent would bring up an issue that you see for the first time, and you had to take a vote on it right away. And that doesn't work. Generally, in the more modern school committee superintendent relationship, we don't vote on a major issue the first time we see it unless there's some emergency. We generally need to see it ahead of time and to think about it before we take a vote. And that's another reason why the subcommittee process has been so successful for us. Okay. Did I miss anything, Mr. Acting Superintendent? Or does that sound about right? Okay, thank you. And if you have any more questions, and afterwards you can always pinhole me or anybody who's been. Okay. Great, thank you. Subcommittee. So send me emails, or send Julia emails, and she'll send them over to me. Great. The acting principal's report, Katie Bouchard.
I just wanted to start out we did quite a few changes over the summer during our administration retreat. We also had some staff members look over some of the stuff in the handbook, and it went much quicker than I anticipated. It was great to work so quickly in order to get this prepared for our families to be sent out later this August. So we're seeking the approval of the student handbook.
So moved. So moved.
Discussion. Alice.
I just like to say from the subcommittee that worked with Katie Bouchard and Brian Tilsley, it was a great process. It went really fast. It was really terrific. Thank you.
And those of you who have not participated in this before, it is quite a task to review the handbook and to bring it up to date. Yeah.
I also really appreciate all the work that went into this. I do have a question about 310. I'm sorry that I just saw this. I didn't know that. It's students who have absences beyond 2 absences in a term. I just was looking for clarification. Is that the absences including excused absences, or is that supposed to be who have absences beyond 2 unexcused absences?
Let me just look at the section real quick.
And the reason I'm raising the question is that what in my work life, for Federation for Children with Special Needs, we've been getting a lot of calls from parents over the last school year about issues of actions that schools have taken when their students have excused absence, a hospitalization, an issue that where they need to be out because of their disability. So I just wanted to make sure that that was being taken into account. I didn't know if you meant unexcused absence or that you were going to be doing this follow-up with any absences and if you knew.
Sure.
So-
I'll definitely follow up with our attendance officer. But earlier in the handbook on page 33, we had it that they're limited to a total of 12 absences, which is excused and unexcused. So I'll follow up with her on that specifically, but it's my understanding of 12 in total, whether or not it's excused or unexcused. Of course, if there's a medical circumstance and they get a medical clearance, that's a little bit, different, but I'll follow up with her.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just how many pages is this handbook?
A lot.
It's a lot. Yes, and
know.
people have to read it and understand it and abide by those policies. And that is quite an undertaking at any institution. So Eagle Eye sees something that they raise a question on.
Mhm.
Any further discussion on the motion on the table, which is to accept the handbook? Very well, then bring it to a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Great.
Great, thanks. At this time, I'd like to invite up our Director of Admissions and Marketing, Erin Norson.
Hello, I don't think I've met everybody here, but I'm Erin Norson and I was here in some capacity last year and now I'm back in this new role. So my first event that I was able to help Anthony with was the introduction to the Revolution, which was held between August 1st and 3rd. We had 125 students from class of 2027 attend, which was really great to have such a full house, to have kids back in the building. We had 8 Minuteman staff lead events. The scavenger hunt, huge success. The kids loved it. They got to run around the building, get associated with where things are. It was really a lot of fun. They worked on effective communication, preparing for high school, how to communicate professionally with their teachers, which was a wonderful class. They also worked on some mindfulness and they did a lot of community and team building. There was such a great energy in the building. It was lovely for kids to come in and meet kids from other towns. This is a little scary because they're going to a high school that is not in their town. This is a big change. And so it was great to see them making friends, to see them laughing, to see groups forming. So it was really just an awesome way to start this class into our school year. Huge thank you to our 8 Minuteman staff members, Sarah Ard, Rachel Bedini, Sarah Kammer, Nikki Devereaux, Mike McQuilkin, Kathleen Mushella, Nicole Morella, and Beth Nardone, who really led the way and provided this amazing curriculum for the students. In addition, we had our summer school leads help, Dylan English and Jamie McDonough, who they ran interference with any bus issues we had, and they were checking kids in for attendance. So it was just so amazing to have everyone here, and we thank them so much. Big, huge thank you to Madison Horner, who is our assistant for admissions, and she does all the behind the scenes work to really make this run so smoothly. So Madison deserves a lot of the credit, and she is just so lovely to work with. I'm so excited to start working with her more closely. From there, here's a little bit of my marketing side. We came out of our social media silence that we were for a little bit, and we were able to do some really great story posting on Instagram and then do some great posts on Facebook. We had parents share this. We grew our audience. We had 100% of growth and engagement on Facebook. And then we had growth and engagement through our audience on Instagram, all with the right people. We want to see our kids following us, current students on Instagram, and that's where we saw the growth, which was really exciting. And then we saw a lot of growth on our Facebook page with new parents, and they were sharing what we were posting. So excited to continue to grow our social media presence in the right way with content that's really exciting and geared towards the student. I think it's back to you.
So Erin mentioned this was a week as part of our summer school. So this year during the summer, we had over 200 incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students come. We had CTE programs, which ran for 1 week each over the course of 3 weeks. We had morning and afternoon sessions. About half of our CTE students were in-district students. So they are students that might end up at Minuteman come their freshman year. And we had 10 out of 19 of our program majors were offered during the summer, which was some great representation. We also ran our preschool program for 4 weeks. We had 19 students enrolled over the course of the 4 weeks, ages 3 to 5. A lot of outside water play, as you can imagine, because it's hot and the kids love the sprinklers. So there's one of our clients right there enjoying some time outside on the playground. We also offered some academic recovery classes and enrichment classes. We had algebra, geometry, English, and biology running. We had 19 students participate, but some of them took multiple classes. We had 14 out of 19 that were actually Minuteman students, and all of the students that were enrolled in these classes passed their summer courses, which was great. So spending the time indoors when it's nice out is never fun, but they all got the outcome that they were looking for, which was great. A huge thank you to Dylan English and Jamie McDonough. They were 2 new summer school directors this year. They took it with, I think they had about 10 weeks when they took the position to get the summer up and running, and they did a fantastic job. We had 24 out of 25 of the staff members were Minuteman teaching staff here during the school year, so that was great. And we were able to cover almost all of the staff funding with a grant that we secured earlier in the year. We had about a $75,000 grant, which covered all about maybe 2 or 3 staff members. So it was great that it was a good revenue boost for the school because the majority of the staffing was covered by the grant. Next year, we are looking forward to increasing our summer school offerings, reaching out to the upper elementary school students as well, and offering some programming for them. So any questions on either the intro to Revolution or summer school stuff? Yep.
I'm just very glad to hear you're going to advance to the upper elementary because that's definitely where everyone's going, and it's exciting to hear.
I just want to say congratulations. It's so exciting to hear all
this. Yep. All right. So we did want to just highlight that Minuteman won the NESPRA. It's the National School Public Relation Association Awards for the videos produced with an outside contractor. As some of you might remember, we used Andrew Mudge to create some of our promotional videos a couple years ago. So we got the awards for the video I Am Minuteman, which spotlighted Emily Cotwall, who's one of our environmental science teachers. And we also had a video for the Minuteman Technical Institute, which spotlighted one of our students, Raul Gonzalez. And he is a robotics technician student. The videos are short, so I did want to share the videos briefly at the meeting.
Aquaponics is necessary because of climate change, because areas with scarce access to water, with scarce access to food, need systems like aquaponics. So aquaponics is not just good to learn about, it's the future of sustainable agriculture. Everything that we need to teach is right here. Being able to stand up and walk and go into our next space and be able to show them something that in a book and on paper was not making sense. What these kids get, I think they don't always know it when they're here, but when they leave and they go out into the world, they see that everything I learned about, I also saw, I also felt, I also did. My name is Emily Cotwall, and I am Minuteman.
Videos. We had a couple different videos made with different staff members. How do I get off this page? There we go. And here's the second video.
I went into the Army when I was 18. I did 5 years, 2 tours to Iraq. Now I'm opening up a new chapter in my life that's going to help me in the future. It's something that I didn't know I was going to love this much, but I feel that I found what I was put on this earth to do. All the equipment that's here, it gives you a lot of confidence to train on your profession. I'm looking forward to using the skills that I've learned in Minuteman and applying them to my future job. I definitely want to get into underwater automation, underwater welding, things of that nature, radio frequencies, the way they interact, security. You know, coming from the infantry, you're always thinking about security and safety and helping others. So coming to Minuteman, it's been great since day one. The teachers, they're all very knowledgeable. They have decades of experience in the field. You feel like you're getting trained by the best, and that's the type of environment that, you know, Minuteman has created. Like I said, I'll never forget where I came from. I'm very appreciative of the entire experience.
Either of the videos. And some of the videos are actually linked to the website. So if you go on the environmental page within Minuteman, you'll see that video again. So any of the programs that we do have the videos created for are linked directly to the programs. Every year at the end of the year, our departments, our CTE, our academics, our special education guidance, the whole building kind of does a reflection on how their year went. We will work on showcasing some of the other departments, hopefully at the next school committee meeting. This is the Library Media Center report. So I wanted to share this with you. It was prepared by Kara Gleason, who's our library media specialist, and also her assistant, Emily Andrews. So the purpose of the annual report is really to communicate what the library was up to all year, their goals, their accomplishments, what they were able to do. They had a lot of celebrations going on in the library about different events they were offering. They got a lot of students involved this year, a lot of integration. They also tried to align their curriculum with the AASL, which is the American Association for School Librarians, some of their common beliefs and their standards moving forward. So I thought this was a pretty cool stats. So these are some just snapshots of how often the library was being used in terms of how many times their website was visited, how much materials they had out there, the use of Sora ebooks, how many students go to the library. So they had 325 different students go to the library either during their study or lunch. So a lot of students do use our library as a little bit of a safe haven to get away from all the noise and the hustle and just have some quiet time for themselves. The librarians are also very involved in helping teach classes. So they had over 500 classes taught, co-taught with the teacher, or they might be doing one on like research or something that can, better help out the class moving forward. This is just some more stats in terms of what pages were most used. In terms of databases, we do have some school-wide goals where students are always, seniors are creating portfolios, they're working on senior projects, so we have electronic links for them to get to those resources. Noodle Tools is the citation site that our students use in their senior projects and also in different research papers and classes throughout the school. So as you can see, we had over 4,000 logins for Noodle Tools, which is great. And again, one of the most popular databases that we use is the Gale database, and we had over 15,000 logins for that. One of my favorite events that they did in the library this year was take a picture of your pet reading. So that was fun. People submitted pictures of their pets with books. Mine with the snails at home did not make it, which was pretty boring to begin with. So collaboration work, they had almost 50 different collaboration projects, and they tracked them from September all the way till June, working throughout the school and working with different departments and classes. They did a whole bunch of different book displays. They had a teen advisory group, which met in order to try to do some planning for the library, how they could spark some more engagement throughout the school. They also had some displays that were up. And some of their future goals just for the library, they love to continue engaging and have some support with the senior projects and the portfolios. They love working with other educators, departments, clusters. They're always willing to travel to your class if you need help or have your class come up to the library. Just grow some connections with the library. And like I mentioned, they're starting that teen advisory group. Of course, they want to encourage reading towards the end of the school year. I presented on last time, we had a Minuteman Reads Day where the whole school stopped what they were doing and read for a period of time. They're always looking at kind of new policy procedures they can bring to the library. And again, last year we had halfway through the year, we were able to get a library assistant part-time, and they would just like to move forward with keeping that position and also hopefully looking for a full-time assistant in years to come. Any questions on the library report? Great.
Just a comment.
Sure.
Keep these little reports coming on the various aspects of the school.
Mhm.
We don't see these often.
Yep. Yep. And like I said, we have more to come that we got at the end of June. So we'll sprinkle those in hopefully at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. The next is that we were awarded the Massachusetts Life Science Grant, which is great. We have been awarded this award in the past, but we have not received it for quite a few years. We got it for $116,632, which was the full amount that we asked for in the grants. I give a lot of credit to our teachers in the agricultural environmental science pathway. They spent a lot of time working on this grant. Oftentimes grants are written by administrators in the school. This was almost 100% done by the teaching team. So on top of their normal load of working with the students and teaching, they also did this throughout the day, spending hours at home as well. So I give them a lot of credit for getting this grant in and getting awarded the grant. The main focus of this grant was to increase our footprint in the biomanufacturing kind of industry, the techniques and the equipment that they're using. As you can imagine, driving around Lexington, there are quite a few biomedical and bioscience buildings that have gone up and have joined the area. So this grant will allow us to add some more curriculum, specifically focused around quality control and quality assurance. It will increase our students' employability post-graduation because they had this training before they left the high school. We're preparing our students to meet higher education, growing needs of the industry by giving them this knowledge. And we're also been in talks with Middlesex Community College about their Learn and Earn program, where students are kind of articulated into one of their classes. Part of that program is that students would be placed in a cooperative education placement with a company, hopefully leading to employment at the end of that kind of class. So again, we're working with Middlesex on that. A lot of the funding is just supporting the equipment that we're bringing to the program. As you can see, it's listed here. There's multi-plate readers. There's a fume hood. There's some tissue culture consumables that will total up to the 116. We also have some professional development in there for our instructors as well. And again, the ultimate impact of this grant is to increase co-op opportunities for our students, readiness for them to join the MCC's Learn and Earn program. We're going to increase students' workplace readiness and provide better trained students going into the growing biotech and biomanufacturing industry. So any questions on this? Yep.
We don't mean to be quiet. We're just so impressed.
Okay,
So
good.
thank you. Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Great. And again, I can't applaud the staff enough. The collaboration that went on. I'd be down there one day, you know, biotech would be working on it. The next day it would be over back with environmental, going back and forth. And we're still collaborating about the fume hood and different aspects of the grant. So we're still working on it. Just lastly, we've been using our ESSER funding. So we just wrapped up ESSER 2. We also have some ESSER 3 funds. So these were hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grants that we received. A lot of it is going towards supporting roles such as the workforce development and co-op director. We have a health assisting technical assistant that travels with our health assisting students out to clinical in order to meet needed ratios for the nursing homes. And then we also have a library and reading paraprofessional that's paid out of the grants. Jean DePaulo was able to run a great after school program on Tuesdays. So we have extra help on Thursdays. This grant allowed us to hire staff to stay on Tuesdays as well. So students could stay another day, go to the library and get homework help from a bunch of our staff team members. So they did a great job running that program. It was very well attended. We plan to run it again this year to give our students another chance to get some extra help as needed. We also used the grant to purchase some materials and programs that help students kind of counterbalance the impacts of learning loss during COVID, not having as much time in school prior to coming to high school, buying some additional materials. We're also looking at exploring the possibilities of a school-based therapy dog. Some other vocational high schools have used their ESSER dollars to bring in dogs that are working with students that need additional emotional support throughout the day. Specifically, I know that Northeast has been using one and has great success so far. So any questions on our ESSER funds? Yes.
Newton South actually had a therapy dog at the nurse's station.
Hmm.
It was very helpful to me because the nurse's station was near where I walked into the school. So I got a little dose every day. I often saw the kids in there just sitting there with the dog.
Mhm.
Made a difference in their day.
Yep. I'm a big fan.
How long are do you anticipate that the ESSER funds will be available? So is it?
So I know that we just closed out ESSER 2, so we don't have any funds left in there. ESSER 3, I anticipate will be done within the next year or two. I don't know, Kevin, if you have an end date off the top of your head, but it's soon, but not tomorrow. You know, it's within a year or two.
So some positions will be available for the next year or so.
Yep. So the positions will be available definitely until the end of the year. We'll probably still have a little bit of funding for next year, but of course, the double-edged sword of putting a position on a grant is that it's a grant funded and this funding source will end. So the hope is that we are able to move some of them over to the district budget. Budget season will be coming, so we'll be looking at what is able to be maintained.
Kevin, do any of these funds have a spend by date? I know that some of them did in the ESSER universe, but the ones in you have in ESSER 3, do they have a spend by date?
They do. I can't remember the exact date. I want to say it's 15 months. Michelle, would you know?
So we have to spend by.
Yes.
Anything else? Great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And what a great transition to the finance report with Steve Ledoux.
Okay, thanks. We don't have too much to report. The Finance Committee did meet at 6 o'clock tonight and primarily just approved payable warrants. I will note, Mr. Chair, that we are down a member since Michael Ruderman got off the committee. So as soon as we can get a full membership, that'd be great, because it won't be too long. We will be in the budget cycle, and you know, the more eyes, the better, so to speak. So don't have much else to report.
Some lucky member of the school committee, whether they want to or not, will be greatly encouraged to join the FinCom, even if they're not experts in finance, or whether they are experts in finance. I may have somebody in mind. So we will take care of that by the September meeting.
We also, as Alice has reminded me, we do have a policy that we can bring outside people onto a subcommittee if push comes to shove as well.
That was a recent policy. It is legal to do so. So our subcommittees, when we want expertise that we don't have, there are 9 of us, right? We can't be experts in always in everything that we need to do. So we do have the ability to bring people in on our subcommittees. We haven't used that often, except for the building committee, which is an exception. But we did in terms of trying to figure out the the,
OPEB.
oh yeah, the delightful OPEB. So we did have a previous member of the school committee from Belmont who was greatly helpful in that. So we can do that if we need to, but it's also good to have members of the committee increase their skills in areas that they have to oversee. So you may not be an expert in finances, but if you learn a little bit more about it, then you can be more helpful in terms of asking questions as time moves on. I know that Judy, were you on the finance subcommittee at one point? Are you still on it?
No.
You on it? And how long have you been on it? Now, has it been a learning experience? Okay, good. Great, okay. Others have. Anything else on the finance committee report?
No.
Very good, thank you. Acting Superintendent Kevin Mahoney. I think this will be a longer report.
Thank you very much. We'll try and keep it concise. I just want to give the committee an update on our staffing as we prepare for the beginning of the school year. I think we're in pretty good shape. We have a couple of positions that we do need to fill. We do have a special education teacher position that's open. We also have a long-term sub and guidance that we're looking to fill as well. We have a special education paraprofessional position and 2 technical assistant positions that were posted. As we're also looking to hire an interim CTE director. Many of you know with Katie's background prior to stepping into her interim role as principal was the CTE director, and I'm hoping with the next item on the agenda, we'll be able to solve that problem. And we also are looking in the process of posting for a network administrators to provide technical support in our technology area. We've been talking about a director of plant and operations. We've been reworking that job description. We've placed that on hold for the time being. Michelle Resendez, who many of you know, she'll be assisting me with the athletic complex discussion, has been filling in on an interim basis to work through some of the plant and operations functions that we're currently doing, including the facility rental piece. So I'm not seeing necessarily an urgency to fill that yet. But overall, I think we're in fairly good shape to begin the school.
Would you like a few motions here? Yes.
Yes.
Could I have a motion to authorize the acting superintendent to extend an employment offer for the position of interim director of career and technical education? Any discussion? Alice?
I just wanted to remind everyone that it's not customary for us to vote on these types of things, but because Mr. Mahoney is acting superintendent, we are voting on it.
Any other discussion on the motion on the table? Very well, then bring it to a vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I would like a motion to reestablish the position of district assistant district treasurer. Okay, just one quick comment. I was unaware that this position had actually been eliminated. So generally, we have a treasurer who is we hired to do treasurer type of things. But, you know, the treasurer, for some reason, may become unavailable. So the assistant treasurer is on standby in case somebody needs to fill in. Is that pretty accurate?
That's very accurate. Yes.
Okay. So if I had known that this was a hole in it, I would have probably, you know, had people bring it up earlier. But in the meantime, it's being handled. The motion is on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion, Alice?
Am I correct that this is eventually a school committee appointment?
That's correct.
So there are a few positions that the school committee needs to vote on. Treasurer, assistant treasurer, nurse, for some reason, doctor, assistant superintendent, and business manager. Is that correct? And I think I mentioned treasurer. So most positions that are hired by the superintendent, we normally do not vote on. But those positions we must vote on. So assistant treasurer, we would vote on. These others, like interim director of career and technical education, as was mentioned, we would not nominate. It's just the superintendent's choice. Yes, Shelley.
This is a full-time position?
No. It's as needed position. Is that correct? Yeah, so they're not here. None of these, a treasurer is not a full-time position. They're both as needed, but this one is hopefully less as needed than the treasurer. The treasurer comes and gives us occasional reports, deals with the bank accounts and treasurer-like things. And this person we only see when they're needed. Yes.
Just to follow up on that, in the job description, it does say that the district doesn't expect it to exceed, I think this is 20 hours for this position for the year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other comments on the motion regarding the assistant treasurer? Very well, then bring it to a vote. All in favor of the motion on the table? Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. The last item I'd like to report on is to revisit, if you will, the phase 2 athletic complex development RFP. The last time the school committee discussed this was back in March, and it's been a pending issue since then. I've had communication as well as Michelle with Leslie College as to where we are in the process. And I told them that I'd be circling back with the school committee to review it. Some of the items I provided as a refresher and perhaps helpful to our newer members is a little bit of history with so to kind of the idea of this presentation that we'll go through is to we'll go back to what our initial intentions were, where we are now. What are some of the implications that the school committee may want to consider as it relates to the financial considerations as well as the non-financial considerations? And if the committee decides to move forward, what the roadmap is to engage, enter into a license with the one bidder that we received from Leslie College. So that's what we'll be going through. I'm anticipating, because of the amount of material and some of the concerns that may be raised, particularly entering into a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options, that there'll be a lot of questions. So I am not tonight expecting a vote, but rather just trying to revisit the topic so that we can perhaps have a more informed discussion that we can kind of track moving forward. So as you know, in the packet, I did provide an executive summary. Tonight's presentation's in your packet. Minutes from the March 14th, 23 school committee meeting. The Leslie University RFP response. A construction budget, what I can tell you is already a bit dated, given escalation. A draft memorandum of understanding, which is just that, it's a draft, and a site access license agreement. Some of the things to keep in mind is if and when we are ready to award the bid, that then the work continues. When we ultimately determine a license agreement moving forward, those terms will all have to be negotiated so that it's within the broad scope of the RFP, but negotiated in a way that's fair to Leslie and Minuteman, noting that Minuteman takes priority. So I do think we'll go through this, but I think that it's just important to note that this is just another step in the process to bring this moving forward. So with that, I'm going to ask Michelle to take us through the PowerPoint, and then we'll have a discussion about the financial considerations, and then we can have a discussion.
Microphone.
It's okay. Just saying hello, I'm Michelle Resendez. I previously was at Minuteman about 7 years ago. So I'm glad to come back and help out and take a look at this. And, also I'm a fresh set of eyes on this. So I think it's good to know that by bringing you up to date is also giving me an opportunity to take a look at the agreements and kind of be able to provide that analysis without having any back knowledge of it, the agreement originally. So just really quickly, what was our major goals when we went out for this RFP? Our goal was to secure long-term funding for a facility expansion, and our goal was to improve and expand the athletic facilities. I mean, really, that was what our goal was moving forward. We wanted to finalize a comprehensive lease agreement, and we wanted to execute the build out of the phase 2 design plan. One of the main objectives when going out for this RFP and thinking about this relationship for the school committee was that this financial model needed to be self-sustaining. Its operation, including the capital replacement, and that none of this would impose on the district budget or assessments. Again, this is just a really quick overview. This is more for your consumption after this, but just to give you an idea of what the main objectives are of the RFP were: completion of the athletic complex, a 10-year lease agreement, and use for interscholastic athletics and curriculum. Capacity for competitive events, the future recreational use and development. It talks about the contract lease and terms, the timeline for the submission and award, and then the executing the lease and purchase agreement. So that was when we put out our RFP. Those were the main components of the RFP that were sent out that Leslie, our one person, responded to, or one organization. The RFP was posted on January 17th. We had one response from Leslie University. The school committee reviewed this originally on March 14th, 2023. And just to be clear, no contract has been awarded at this time. Really quickly, again, this is for you to read through, and also, with the provided backup that we had given you, you can kind of take an idea, but these were things that we pulled out of our Leslie's response that were negotiable items that, kind of stuck out to me, but that also, were either in line or not kind of in line with what we had put out in our RFP. None of these are actual red flags. These are just discussion points for the school committee to take a look at, to think of. These are some of the things that when we're negotiating this contract, we should be thinking about. And again, this is some discussion points on their budget response. So the first part was on their response to the RFP. There were two parts of that response from the university. It was first their response to the RFP, but then secondly, they provided a budget response. So these are just some other discussion points when we're looking at the budget portion of the RFP, of the response. So one of the things that I took a look at when I was doing the financial analysis for this, because I know that the main concerns were to ensure that Minuteman had the availability on the fields and in our school for our programs, and to make sure that was our priority. But then also to take a look at, if we were to do this agreement, how much time would be left outside of Minuteman and Leslie, and what those seasons were, and what those times were, and what the financial implications of that are. So this is just a generalized quick, well, I won't say quick because it definitely wasn't quick to do, but a generalized idea of, and we broke it down by the different seasons. So you could take a look, because there are some assumptions that go into our financial analysis, and that does have to do with when the availability of the fields or the availability of the gymnasium, and that differs from season to season. Also, its rentability differs from season to season. We might have a ton of time in the winter on the fields, obviously, but there's also a lot less going on outside in the winter time. So even though that field is available, it doesn't mean that we're going to capture all of the revenue from that unused field at that moment. So the majority of the time, Minuteman, either during our day block or then our block for Minuteman athletics, uses the facilities, which included in this is the gymnasium, all of our athletic fields, the theater is part of all of this. So 60% of the time it's used by Minuteman. 29% of the time for your field is used by Leslie, according to their schedule right now. 21% gym use. We have another kind of long-term renter, very good renters that use a significant, our field significant, and also use our gymnasium as well. That's the Bolts. And so 6% of the time during the fall season, they're basically on the field. And then we have, 6% of your time, that's your remaining hours. 19% in your gym is your remaining hours in the fall season. Same with the winter season. I don't have to go through all of the numbers, but just to give you an example. So in the fall season where you see 19% of rentable time in the gym, you think that's revenue numbers sitting in your pocket. But some of the time it's times that are not conducive to people who are looking to rent. It's usually 9 to 10 o'clock at night, or it's 5 to 6 p.m. in between other renters there. So when we were making these financial assumptions, we took into consideration, like I said, all the times, the different seasons, and anything else that would affect the rentability of a space. Summer is our biggest time to generate revenue, especially in our, throughout the entire building. And that is because both of our major renters, right, Minuteman and Leslie, are actually don't do much during the summertime months of the end of June, July, and early August. So that availability in the summer is where our potential is as well, because we also have the opportunity for summer camps and things like that, people are often looking for space to rent during those timeframes, especially outside. So I kind of gave you a little bit of an example on the things, those assumptions that we used when we were doing this financial analysis. So not only were they based on previous rentals, but also, based on the percentage of available time, times by our average rate is where we came up with our daily, weekly rentals. We have additional rentals coming in daily. We are actually becoming extremely booked right now for fall season and in our gymnasium for the winter season. And again, this is a conservative estimate. We really wanted to make sure that we weren't overstating what our revenue sources or what our revenue would be. I know you wanted to jump in on this part.
Thanks, Michelle. Just a couple of comments on the financial analysis. What we took a look at is what I would call a sources and uses analysis, where we wanted to capture all of our revenue sources. The middle column would be if we were to enter into a successful license agreement with Leslie, and the far right column would be if we did not. Just a couple of comments on it. As Michelle said, we have some historical the basis for some of these estimates. They're relatively conservative, we think. We also included not only just the outdoor facilities, but we also included some of the other resources that we have on campus, the theater, gymnasium, this room, and other spaces. Because when we look at the special legislation that enabled us to set up the revolving fund, all of that revenue would go into that revolving fund and we expend it accordingly. So when we took a look at it with the Leslie agreement, we were looking at total revenue of somewhere around $628,000. When we took a look at it without the Leslie lease, we'd be generating about just over $1,090,000. On the assumption that that space that Leslie would otherwise occupy under a license agreement, that would then be prime rental opportunities for Leslie or others to rent. So that's the difference between the 628,000 in the middle column and the $1,090,000 in the right-hand column. So when we look at the application of funds or how we use them, some of the things that our intentions are in terms of what our costs are, our direct costs, we'd like to allocate about 20% of the facilities director position, that salary. We have an event coordinator or rental coordinator of about $43,000. We'd like to be able to fully fund a maintenance worker, and we have to take into consideration some overtime that would be involved with the operation of the facility. When we look at other expenses, we look at our annual maintenance cost, our annual capital reserve that would be a set aside each year, so that 10 or 12 years from now, when the fields need to be changed out and the surface needs to be done over, we would have the funds on hand. And the annual maintenance cost and the annual capital reserve were cost estimates that were provided to us from KBA at the time we started initially building out the facility, so that we could establish a reasonable annual amount that we could set aside. The utility costs, we just don't necessarily have a real good historical analysis on that, since the facility hasn't been built yet, but we just took an estimate of about 5% of our utility costs that we would just allocate to recognize that there are some expenses associated with moving this forward. When we took a look at our existing debt, that's the annual debt that we currently have obligations for of about $116,000 per year. And then if we were to look on the far right-hand column, where we did not enter into an agreement with Leslie University, in order for us to build that out and issue debt for that, it would be about $1.2 million per year for the grandstands and the tennis courts. And just by way of context, the project would include about a 1,200 capacity grandstand with a field house, restroom facilities, and 6 tennis courts that we'd be able to generate revenue from as well. So the total uses of funds would be about $584,000 with an agreement. It'd be closer to $1.8 million without an agreement. And then, so when we get to the bottom line, it's a slightly positive a balance when we look at it with an agreement of about $43,000. And that would meet all of our financial goals, primarily as it relates to not adding to member assessments, any of the debt service or any of the costs associated with it. It's the goal is to be fully self-sustaining. If we were to go it alone, given the model that we're working off of, it would be about 694,000 in a negative position that would need to be funded through district resources. So I think some of the potential benefits that we took away from it would be to complete the facility. It would be fully self-sustaining. No impact on member assessments, good exposure for the school district. And it would give us some stability as far as long-term planning goes, if we were to move forward with it. Some of the long-term considerations that need to be considered, though, when we look at the other side of it, is, the term of the lease. It's a 20-year, it's a 20-year all-in lease, but with a couple of off ramps, there's a 10-year base lease and then 2 5-year options. So there's opportunities there, but at the end of the day, it could be, it could go as long as 20 years. There could be scheduling conflicts. As we grow over time, or as Lesley University grows over time, there may be some issues that would have to be dealt with once we get into this partnership, if you will. There's always project construction risk. When the scope of the project is probably about $15-16 million. So, you could have anything from supply shortages to cost escalation to labor, any of those types of construction risks. When we'd be having basically another entity responsible for the construction of the project, but we're the owner. So that could cause some concerns, as well as project oversight and management. We'd have to talk about making sure that our architects are involved as far as the oversight, and as well as the project management. That's a concern as well. We're doing these analysis today on where we see the revenue opportunities based on the demand for field rentals. But that could change over time. If there's a new facility that opens up nearby, or another school district were to enhance their facilities, would that added capacity impact the demand that we currently think that we have now? So, and then just sustainability after the lease expiration. Does that mean Lesley walks away and do not use the facility at all? Does that create a gap in any type of revenue? What kind of condition will the facility be in? So those are some of the considerations that we wanted to highlight. But as I said in my opening comments, there's probably a number of concerns and a number of benefits that the committee might take away from this as well. So I think just to wrap it up, I think the next steps, if the committee were to choose to go forward, would be to vote to award the RFP. That begins the process. That doesn't commit the process. So we still have to execute a site license agreement. There's a draft of that in your packet that was drafted by our attorney, which basically allows Lesley to access the property, to do their own due diligence on what the scope of the project would need to be. Again, there was a draft MOU in your packet, but it's just a draft. We'd need to work on very specific terms that we'd like to include in the memorandum of understanding. We'd be, coming back to the member towns and others, maybe some of our other primary renters, to let them know what type of what the agreement is looking like. Make sure that we can get some feedback from those stakeholders, negotiate the final license agreement and then bring it to the school committee for a vote. So that concludes our presentation on this. We'd be happy to address any questions.
Pam,
Thank you. And this was really helpful. And I really appreciate this overview and kind of bringing us up to date on, excuse me, where everything is. I do have a couple of questions. One is when, one of the first things that I was looking at when I was looking at the financial analysis and the expenses is with the grandstand tennis court addition, does it have to be like all or nothing? So if we wanted to move forward in a way that maybe didn't include the entire scope, I would be really interested in seeing what the financial impact would be of that. Does that make sense?
Certainly.
Because- So,
Look-
because right now it looks, if we're doing it alone, we're losing a lot of money, but are there other options for us?
Certainly, we could do a phased approach. This was the vision, I guess, for building out the athletic facilities. But if we wanted to adjust the scope or phase it in such a way that it makes it a bit more manageable, we could have those discussions. This gives it basically the parameters of where we are today and we need to
Yeah.
do the full project, or what we'd be able to do with Leslie participating to build out the full project.
Okay,
But
yeah.
you have room in between to consider.
Yeah, I would be very interested in that. And I have two other questions. One is, I think my understanding of, looking at your roadmap, getting feedback from our towns comes like way after we would vote on the award. And I do have a concern in that at least some of our towns, or I should just talk for my town, at some point in the past had heard that by moving forward with the athletic complex, that there would be an anticipation of funding that would be coming to towns. And the last time when we talked to them and they heard that it's a 10-year lease with, 2 5 years, they're like, so 20 years, there's going to be, no, anticipation of, any financial funding coming, off of this. And that was something that was of great concern. And I would be very interested in just having a better understanding of where our towns are on this and, their understanding of what they believed when we were first moving forward with this project and where they're at now.
We'd certainly have to have those meetings. I think typically in the fall, it's always good for us to get together with the town managers and administrators, discuss where Minuteman is at in terms of enrollment, anticipated budget, what's happening here. And this would certainly be one of those topics where we can have those discussions.
And I guess my question is, should that happen before we vote on the award or not? I'm asking that as a question for us to be thinking about what the right time is on that.
Yeah, again, I think that the award basically is just an opportunity to say, we're interested. And we'll move forward, but
But it doesn't obligate us.
no, if we can't negotiate a mutually agreeable license agreement, then we don't move forward.
And then my third question is the information that we saw from Leslie. I know there were a lot of things I had questions about, that I had concerns about. I'm not sure, again, in the process where we're talking about all those details. Is that after the award? Is that part of the MOU? I'm not sure kind of
Yes to both.
where that would fall.
Yes to both. I mean, we'd agree to award the contract. Accept the proposal. but at that point, we go into negotiations about, how much time we can commit and how it can be used. We had the same concern about some of that because we're starting to see aspects of the proposal that may have gone a bit beyond the boundaries of what we're anticipating as it relates to maybe intramural use or using the fitness area for their student athletes. Those are all things that we'd have to really tie down in a negotiation. So we need to be mindful about that. But again, I think but the next logical step to engage those conversations would be to actually award the bid.
Thank you.
Alice.
Thank you for the detail because I personally have really been wanting it, as you know. My question has to do with whether Leslie knows that 60% of the time is already devoted to Minute.
Yes, they are very aware, and even in their proposal and our RFP, it was very clear that Minuteman would be priority. I have been working with Leslie, actually they're very easy to work with right now. Not that that's either way, but we have been working together and they are very aware that we come first, and they have moved things around and been conscious when asking us for certain things to know that, this isn't if they had to ask us for something, it's more so we will not do this. This isn't setting precedent or anything. It's just, we need this one thing. Can you do this? And same with us is yes or no. And they're very good about it.
So if Minuteman, instead of 60%, decided we need 70% because we're going to add more teams or more sports or whatever our kids need, or we have more kids, suppose we get to the 800 from some Deus Ex Machina event that occurs and we get to 800 students, they would understand that it's possible that we would actually take up more than 60% of the field.
I wasn't here for that original conversation. As part of the RFP, it states that our athletics would always come first. So I think that in Leslie or any responder to this RFP would take that into consideration when they were responding to it. But also, like Kevin said, those are things that we would bring up in that negotiations part, where you come to that agreement of like, you're signing this on the dotted line, knowing that at some point we may expand our programming.
Right.
But there also may be something from Leslie that's saying, we may be expanding our program. So that discussion has to happen, that negotiations have to happen in order to get rid of all doubts, I think.
Right.
Is basically, or just, to make sure that everybody is on the same page and understands it completely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate the thoroughness of this, and it's given us a lot of information to digest. So thank you. Just to piggyback on Pam's comment. So, this is the kind of thing I'd love to bring to my capital expenditures committee now, and just to get their thoughts about this. Do you think this is just premature? I just hesitate to bring it to the committee, to that finance committee when it's a done deal. Just a thought, just a question, comment.
Fair question. Again, it's not my intention to try and rush any type of action that the school committee feels is appropriate. So I'll take my direction from the school committee or the administration will. It's only one party that bid, Leslie University. So I think negotiating an extension on the award, they would be receptive to, I would hope. So if the school committee feels as though there needs to be some more information sharing with member towns or subcommittees, then that's the way we'll go. We're not in any particular. There's no, I shouldn't say urgency, but we're just trying to move it forward in a thoughtful way, prudent way. But if that's the way we go, that's the way we'll have to go.
Okay. Is there a, what's the timeline for this? What's the drop dead date that Leslie wants to wrap this up? Do we have one, or is this, because it seems like, we've been in a pause since March.
They're aware of that. We've had regular communication with them. Michelle deals with them quite often. I've dealt with them I've had a couple of meetings with them. And my assurance to them has been that we'll be revisiting it with the school committee, and then I will just keep them up to date as to where we're at. So.
Okay. And then lastly, in some of the Leslie materials, it talks about the architectural firm that they like, and you did mention this in your presentation. So I just assume, everything is, the public RFP process. And again, you mentioned we get to have a say in the architectural firm or the OPM or whomever might be on campus.
That'd be our expectation, that we would want to have that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve. Yeah, a couple things. First, I think it's interesting what Pam said about Acton and the finance committee, because I was town manager then when AB built all those new fields along Route 2, and those things are going 24/7. And I never heard the finance committee expect any revenue coming back to the town. And I'm going to play the part of Ford for a while because he's not here. But if Ford were here, he would say the reason we're doing this is so we wouldn't increase the burden of assessments on our member communities, because those of you who are on the committee remember that the total build out for this project, we felt we just couldn't afford to lay on our member community. So this is a creative way to get there. And I think that's more of maybe the message we have to deliver to our towns, as opposed to them expecting revenue back or revenue sharing or whatever.
Erica.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had a question, a quick question on the next slide. Direct costs. It says, so these are annual costs. I just had a question about the 1.2 million for the grandstand tennis court addition. So that would be yearly expected costs over how many years? I just was curious, is it the 10 years or 15 years or 20?
I
years?
think it's 20, but I'm going to have to
Yeah.
double check. If Michelle can find it quick, that would be great. But I think it was 20, but I could be wrong.
Okay, thank you.
So Michelle and Kevin, thank you very much for the report. Thank you very much, especially for the first look money slides, finance slides. Just a little bit of context. This is part of a very long story. This is, we've been talking about what we're going to do with the athletic facilities at Minuteman for over 10 years. We were talking about it even before we had a vote on a project to move forward. And over that period of time, there have been a million zigs and zags as to what we're going to do, what will it look like, who will we partner with, what facilities will we have. At the end of the building project, we had some money left over. And with that money, we bought our 3 fields, artificial turf fields. But we had this entire build out, which was the fields, the lighting, the stadium, the building, and maybe some other facilities. And we had a possible partner for it that did not work out because we couldn't afford to do it all on our own. We didn't have nearly enough money left over in the project, and we didn't think that the towns would like to take on another 10 or $20 million in debt. I don't know why. They just wouldn't for some obscure reason. So we did the first phase. So they broke it into 2 phases. There was the first phase was the 2.5 phases. The first phase was the field. Then we did go back, and this is important, to the member towns to say, if we had lighting on the fields, then it would be a much better facility for our kids and we can bring in much more revenue. So we actually went back to them for an additional capital with a promise that they were going to get some money back to make up for the lighting, the cost of the lighting. So when we move forward, one of the themes that was brought up is that we get these great facilities for our kids. And actually, there's another benefit that they did not mention, which may or may not be a benefit, was to have a closer relationship with Lesley University, which could bring possibly other benefits. And we get, so they take the expense, they do the building doesn't initially cost us anything, but then we give up an opportunity to use the fields and to bring in some revenue, some of which, not all of which, our towns expect to get. So it is really pretty important to look at, and I found their numbers very interesting, that we still get quite a bit of revenue from the fields if they're, and they said they're being conserved on, so that's important. But it is important to note that we did make that promise. And our towns may or may not be interested in us doing this additional build out. I hope they would be, but I don't know. So it is really important, I think, to engage them sooner rather than later, to get them used to the idea and to let them know there's still going to be revenue coming in. Just not as much as we had anticipated, but we get benefit from it. We get benefit for the school, we get benefit for our students, we get a certain amount of fame, which is also has use. But we really did make that promise. We didn't say how much we were going to get, but we did say that we were going to pay for the lighting. We have to be very careful about that. And as was brought up by Pam, there are a number of risks. It is a huge opportunity, but is a long-term commitment. So you have to get together and like your partner for 10 or 20 years. And, you know, relationships don't always work out that well. There are certain areas in which you can have problems, and you're committing to 10 or 20 years, which is a risk. So it's very interesting. I'm very interested to see the numbers. We're going to be talking about this a lot over the next half year, I imagine. The finance subcommittee is going to be looking at this a lot over the next half year. I'm just guessing. And you have a lot of information. And I think that before this presentation, this information without the context may not have been as meaningful as it could be. But now you have the context. So I advise all of you, if you have not done so, or even if you have at this presentation, to read it through very carefully. Because this is going to be a challenging decision to make, yes or no, because there are a lot of upsides and there are a lot of risks as well. Did I say anything that wasn't fair? No. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was a lot of fun to watch. I'm glad I have all this information here. I think that the main idea is we really do have to talk to our towns sooner rather than later. You heard that many times. We really have to become experts in this and something as complicated as this. And if there's nothing left, we'll move on from this agenda item unless there are additional comments or questions.
Mr. Chair, just clarification.
Sure.
It's based on a 20-year.
20 years, which is a long time. Alice.
And I just thank you again, because this was so informative and it's what we are about. Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle's really done a lot of great work on this, and I appreciate, I'm so happy she's back with us to work with us.
I'm going to point out, Michelle, again, this is really, really good. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. That was excellent. Okay, now So that concludes the agenda for the regular meeting, the regular session, the open session. But don't be upset because we have another meeting coming right up. You didn't have enough meeting tonight. So I would like a motion to move into executive session to include Julia and Joshua Coleman, not to return to open session. And I'm going to read the reasons. There are two reasons. Reason A, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of the superintendent director, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges brought against the public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Reason B, pursuant to everybody's favorite chapter, MGL, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, for the purpose of discussing strategy as it relates to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the superintendent director. I remind the committee that when we move to executive session, that's always a roll call vote. So when we do go to vote, we'll start it at this end and move down the line. I need a second. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Bring it to a vote.
Steve Ledoux, Concord, yes.
Erica LZ Bolton, yes.
Sarah Montague, Arlington, yes.
Pam Acton, yes.
Judy Crocker, Lexington, yes.
Alice DeLucas, Joe, yes.
Jeff Stuland Needham, yes, passes unanimously. So this meeting is adjourned and we're going to move into the other room for our continuation. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to all the speakers.